There we go.
Hello and welcome everybody on Forever Sports, Forever Rugby. It's Thursday evening, 8 o'clock South African Standard Time, and I'm joined by two of the wonderful gents who's part of this team. Riaan to my right and Cal on the left. Guys, how are you doing?
Very good. Thank you very much. I've got a rosé. I've got a banana muffin. I think they call that gold dinner. I'm on holiday, so couldn't be happier.
Yeah, not too bad. At least it's a bit not as cold as it was last week here in Edinburgh. So surviving, we'll put it that way.
Yeah, guys. So Riaan, you mentioned you got a rosé. Obviously, tomorrow, before we go any further, is the 15th of December, and it's a very significant day for South Africans. It's
Yep.
Springbok Day, if you want to call it. Call it whatever you want, I guess. But it's just a day where we reminisce and become nostalgic on South Africa winning that Rugby World Cup. I just want to touch base with either of you on the Springbok Day. And then obviously just if you've encountered any South African All Black fans, and I'll throw it to you, Riaan. How are they doing if you have, in fact,
No,
encountered
they're
any?
all very. I haven't run into any of those. I think I would shake their hand and ask them how they're doing, but I can tell you that the Springboks and Nike released a whole bunch of extra jerseys and T-shirts that will all go on sale tomorrow. With the World Cup jerseys have the
Yeah,
cup
yeah.
and then 95, 2007, 2019, and they've added 2023 now. Limited edition run is coming out tomorrow in a few stores across the country. So tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, I'm at the shops. I'm looking for a new jersey. That's how I'm going to
Spend,
spend my Bok World
spending
Cup
that
day.
bonus, spending that bonus
Yeah.
there. Cal, what's your thoughts, brother?
Well, I'm English, so screw you guys.
Okay. Yeah, it's just interesting. I just wanted to just touch in on the quarterfinal, semi-final, and final. Of course, the 1 point victories. Riaan, seeing that you're the Springbok guy in the room, can you remember those games just in a nutshell, where you were, and just touching base from the quarterfinal, the 1 point, the semi-final was like no way, no way to the
Yeah.
final. How do you encapsulate your thoughts as we approach this 15th of December public holiday?
Trauma. It's like post-traumatic stress disorder. You can't go through 3 weekends like that in a row and not be like affected emotionally by it. I was actually sitting where I am right now. I was watching it on my computer. I was on Discord with my mates because we all scattered across the world. And we were just sitting watching it like that. And then the final, I was in my lounge. I was the only one awake in the house, and yeah, I was just losing it. Especially 40 or 80. What was it? 60 minutes into the England game, I thought, okay, we're done. This is over, and then we somehow won that. So yeah, the emotional damage, I'm still dealing with it, but the win always makes it feel better.
Awesome. And then Cal, just from a point of view of the next Rugby World Cup, we're looking at 2027. They're going to expand the teams to 24 teams. What sort of impact do you think that has on the brand of the Rugby World Cup? Do you think it's a good thing for the brand of rugby? And then obviously, do you feel the Boks can go back to back to back? I know you're not a true South African supporter. You're English, and good on you. But just give me your thoughts on that World Cup. Obviously, it's 4 years in 4 years' time. But before we know it, we're there again. So yeah, what's your thoughts?
I mean, I'm really looking forward to it. Despite the fact they've added 4 teams, I know it's now a weekend shorter. I think it is.
Yeah.
It means that the nice thing is it means that more tier 2 teams are included, more talent around the world is included, and considering how the likes of Portugal were playing in this World Cup, it's really exciting. Despite Chile getting absolutely smashed each game, I loved their brand of rugby, and I loved watching them play. And it's what rugby around the world needs, not necessarily for the bigger nations, but the tier 2 nations need this.
It's almost like you'll get a nice little sub World Cup where Portugal and those teams will be in groups with more teams at their level. So you'll get like the big boys, and then you'll get this like sub World Cup of all those.
They're more likely to get their final.
Yeah, and there's win that they're looking for.
Yeah.
So basically, rugby across the globe will be growing, getting a step closer, I guess, to football. But touching on that, Cal, you mentioned Portugal. Riaan, they will be playing against the Springboks, of course, in 2024. Just reward for their performances. What do you think, A, it would do for Portugal, and B, just the Springboks hosting them in 2024?
Well, I hope they're not the only team that gets announced. I don't know if any other major nations, tier 1 teams have announced their home test series for next year. I know South Africa did, and we've got Ireland coming, and then Portugal. I think it's amazing. I wish they would announce where it's going to happen so that I can see if I can get to the test. I really want to see them live. There's a few players in that team that are brilliant. And I think it's great. It'll give them something to work towards, not just, it's only in 4 years now, we've got to worry about qualifying. Now they can be like, oh, we're going to South Africa, guys. We're going to play in front of a South African crowd. And I'm pretty sure there will be a good crowd going there. There's a lot of Portuguese people that are keen to go. I think it's brilliant. And I hope we're not the only country hosting a team like that. I hope we hear Argentina will be hosting Chile. New Zealand might be hosting, I don't know, Romania or someone, just spread that love a little bit.
Absolutely. Cal, and then just talking about I saw some talk in the week regarding a global rugby calendar. What are your thoughts, if you can put it together or frame it for us, on actually rugby becoming all of us on the same level in terms of a global calendar?
I've seen the different, I suppose, the concepts, and certainly the kind of the concept they're pushing hardest. It has its merits, but it also has its pitfalls. And I think it'll take a lot of trial and error before we find the perfect system that suits tier 2 nations as well as tier 1. I think interestingly, I think one of the things we need to do in order to grow the game in the way we want to is actually to cater less to tier 1 nations. They're already successful. They're already established. It's like, it's the same kind of thing where if you look at, the whole kind of development of developing countries, when we look at, let's say, global emissions and things like that, you can't go to an emerging country in Africa and say, you can't do this. We've already done it. You can't say that. It's hypocritical. It's unfair. We now have caused the problem. We should solve it. And to be honest, the RFU actually needs to be at the forefront of it, because for way too long, you get teams like Samoa and Fiji occasionally coming over to play, and they make like 10% of the match day profits, which is ridiculous. And the tier 2 nations need to benefit from that, not losing money by going and play tier 1.
Cal, that's a very good point you mentioned there. And Riaan, I'm going to throw it to you. I don't want to get too complicated, but I think in terms of a business model for World Rugby, if you take a team like Fiji, the national side don't spend too much time together because the players are preoccupied with earning their keep in France and Europe, for example. So how do we make sure that a national team like Fiji don't just rock up to a World Cup and get a £20 or whatever, for that matter, daily allowance, and actually are up there with the rest of, as Cal mentioned, the tier 1 nations?
So that global calendar thing they were talking about, that's one of the things it's supposed to do is it's changing the 6 nations. The 6 nations going to be a week shorter. There's going to no longer going to be 2 rest weekends. It's only going to be 1 rest weekend, which is good. And that's going to open up windows for players to be eligible. There's like a Regulation 9 window where clubs in Europe and other places have to release their players for international duty. Now, a lot of times those windows don't fall exactly on the times where the international teams are playing.
Sure.
So this new global calendar is setting those windows in stone, and a French club cannot keep a Fijian player or whatever in their country. So you'll get your full strength Fiji team. You can get your full strength Fiji team to then go and play another nation, which is a good thing. But the problem is they've kind of blocked it off. There's no promotion relegation between the tier 1. So the top 12 tier 1 teams will be playing against each other. And then there will be a championship below that of all the rest of the teams. And there's supposed to be promotion relegation, but only in 2030. So a whole nother World Cup cycle before those lower teams will even be allowed to go up, which means all those stars we saw now playing for Portugal, by the time their team can play to get promoted to the top tier, all those guys are gone. Their whole career is finished. We'll never see them again. So there's a whole, it's good in the one side that they aligning the calendars, they're making sure players will get released and all that stuff. And then they stuff it up by saying, oh, but we're not going to promote you until 2030, when an entire generation of players will be lost. So it's one step forward, 2 steps back. So there's, like Cal said, there's teething issues. Hopefully over the time that comes, we'll be able to sort those kinds of things out.
Absolutely. And then, and Cal, just finishing off on this topic, in terms of like a World Cup that we saw now, for players who are doing this as a way of life, earning their keep for themselves, their family, do you think it is just a platform for them to basically audition for a European club and basically solidify a contract in Europe, for example, and earn their money? We do want the international teams to be strong, but on an individual level, what do you think goes through the mind of those players?
Yeah, I think sadly it has kind of become that, especially because of just there not being a salary cap in France, and that's in a way that's forcing the RFU to change as well. And you know, the talks of coming out of the RFU sponsoring half of Farrell's like payment, so that Saracens don't essentially have to cut Mario Itoje's payment in half. And I think
with offering Arundel some money as well to stay or to move to Bath.
He's committed to Racing. I don't blame him in the slightest, considering what Borthwick did with him in the World Cup. And yeah, it's an interesting one. It's a problem that's going to keep coming up until they kind of decide. Well, the problem is there's so much money in French rugby, and there's not enough in the Premiership. And that's why clubs keep going bust. It's a problem that's going to take a bit of time to sort out. And you need those competitions to be strong, because they're a good way for players from, you know, Portugal and potentially Chile as well to actually come and showcase their talents, get top flight rugby experience as well, so that they can take it back to their international sides.
Absolutely. And then just coming now to our local rugby. Riaan, you mentioned off air the rugby that we're looking forward to this weekend being the Sharks, the Cheetahs, for example. And I was listening to Jacques Nienaber in one of his press conferences talking about perhaps South African teams playing in smaller stadiums. You were talking about the Super Rugby days of the Cheetahs and the Sharks. Do you think that's a solution to perhaps get the excitement back? Because we sometimes see a group of maybe 10,000 supporters getting lost in a Challenge Cup or in a URC game. What do you think we can do moving forward to get that hype behind the URC, and obviously not just the fact that we're reliant on the Springboks being coming back to the sides, because we only have them for a few weeks and then they're gone again, but we still have to carry that team forward. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we can look at the model that the Stormers are doing. You know, they're taking their games to Stellenbosch a few times a year, and that's making that stadium look good, and then that will make people want to go to Cape Town Stadium. The thing that's funny about the Stormers are they're the only team that doesn't really like own their stadium. DHL is Cape Town's stadium. There's concerts there, blah blah blah. The Stormers are just you know, like tenants. They just primary tenant, but they just tenants, so they get kicked out anytime there needs to be a monster truck rally happening there. Whereas like the Lions, that stadium is owned by the EPS and City of Joburg. EPS is Ellis Park Stadium, which is like a subsidiary of the Lions. The Bulls, I think, own Loftus. The Sharks own Kings Park. So if they're not using those stadiums, they're losing money on them, which is a problem. I wish they would, like you say, take it to a smaller ground. let it look good on TV, and then next week you might sell a few more tickets until your smaller ground is packed. Then you move it back to the big stadium and you might get more people in there. Start from the bottom and work your way up. We're just, I don't know, we keep trying to fill these giant stadiums now for years and years, and it's not working. So I would love for the Lions to take a game to Alberton Rugby Club. There might be a few fights, there might be a few cars doing donuts, but it'll look a lot better on TV.
Glass on the field.
Yeah. Then take it to a Varsity stadium or something, and then from there you can start building up, people wanting to see them play, and then you can go back to Ellis Park.
Absolutely. I just want to remind all the All Black supporters and the South African All Black supporters, it's the 15th of December tomorrow at Springbok Day, in case you've forgotten. You weren't here for the start of the show. But just coming to you, Cal, we spoke last week a little bit about the South African teams blowing hot and cold when they're traveling in Europe, whether it's the 4G pitch or whether it's the conditions. But then the Lions and the Cheetahs travel away and get us some victories in the Challenge Cup. Do you have any feedback on what you can make out of those victories? The Lions, of course, beating Perpignan, and the Cheetahs beating Zebre, respectively.
Watching the Cheetahs versus, who did they play again? Perpignan,
Zebre,
right?
yeah.
Zebre,
yeah. They beat Zebre, and yes, it was Zebra's second side, but this is a Cheetah side that, I think I knew two players. I think I've heard of two of them, and one of them's been around since basically playing for the Springbok.
1944, yes, before the end of the Second
During
World
the
War.
Yeah. The Boer War. But it was really great to see them literally come out of nowhere. They haven't played in ages, and yes, Zebre are bad. Their first team are struggling, and that wasn't even their first team. But they had a couple of Italian players in that team, and they were pretty useless, to be honest. They were bloody awful.
Margin of victory, I didn't expect that.
Their winger was great, but that's about it. And the Cheetahs played really well. I thought they in the second half they really opened up and they played great. I think other than the Cheetahs, and to be fair, actually the Lions are doing okay. The Bulls are doing really well, but the Stormers and the Sharks are pretty much punch myself in the face boring. And it's very clear in certain ways where you can see where the teams are going wrong. The Sharks need a fly half. My God, we need a fly half. And some form of consistency. And then the Stormers is a bit more complicated. I know it's not their first team that's really been playing recently, but they have not turned up in the slightest, and they've barely played any Stormers kind of rugby that we kind of have known for the last two URCs. So I'm not sure where they go from here, except just kind of like the Sharks throwing their box back in. But it's not a good showing for the clubs.
I hear you, brother. We're going to touch on the Champions Cup in a moment, but Riaan, just throwing it then back to you with the Sharks beating PAU at home with quite a lopsided score. Do you think the Sharks would be then prioritizing the Challenge Cup as a tournament to go all the way and try and push on, considering their position in the URC?
That's what I would do. I would say screw the URC. That's too far gone now. They're too far down the table there. If they can get deep into the Challenge Cup or even win it, that's qualification for the Champions Cup next year. So that's what I would do. I'm still not going to say they're back on the bus now because of one good win. We thought that after the Dragons victory, and then what the Bulls did to them was embarrassing. So as Carl says, they do need a 9, a 10 that's got a bit more confidence. And I don't know, it's weird. I saw an interview with Plumtree, and he said that they are very unfit. He got there, and these guys are unfit. They're not training well. They're not doing proper training, and he's trying to instill a better work ethic. So I don't know if they all just enjoying the beaches finally being clean in Durban again. So maybe that's a bit of the issue. And hopefully it'll take time. I want to give Plumtree time. I trust that man. Yeah. He's very good at coaching. and hopefully he can get these guys in shape. And by the end of the season, it happened to Munster last year. You know, they were crap at the start of the season. They lost to the Dragons, and then look what happened. They went on like a seven game winning streak. So if that's the end of the season for the Sharks, we'll all have forgotten this. But yeah, it looks a long way off right now.
Then yeah, I hear you, brother. And then Cal, for you, in terms of, we mentioned this weekend, obviously the Cheetahs hosting the Sharks. For a team like the Cheetahs, a lack of competition rugby, would that mean that the stakes are so much higher? It's non-negotiable for the Sharks to actually get a victory in Bloemfontein?
I think the Sharks desperately need a follow-up victory. They can't just get these one-off big wins and expect it to be a change. It's not. And again, you know, they played Po, but it wasn't their first string side. And the Sharks, you know, they scored a lot of points, but they also had about 20 minutes in the second half towards the end where they didn't score. So they need to solidify the win they've got with another, at least not necessarily a convincing scoreboard win, but a good performance win.
Like a team performance. They've got all these individuals, and it's not clicking as a team, it seems.
Yeah, and I think that makes this a must-win game. But with the Sharks, I literally have not called the right result in about 2 years, and so I'm going to say they're going to lose because that apparently means they'll win. Cheetahs have got nothing to lose, so it's great for them.
I hear you. Then Riaan, sorry, man, just coming to this young Lions team that traveled away and won at Perpignan. They're hosting Newcastle this weekend. I just want to make a mention before I give it over to you to Jaden Hendrickse. Obviously, the fly-off with 23 points, single-handedly basically taking that game by the scruff of the neck. You've got a guy like Sanele Nohamba who's 9 and 10. Is there an opportunity for this Lions team to also push on, like we mentioned with the Sharks, to challenge really for the Challenge Cup?
Well, they do look better this year. They have been playing a lot better. I mentioned a few weeks ago that against Ulster, they did lose, but those first 20 minutes against Ulster, I think they went 14-0 up. They looked very good. All of a sudden, there was this team that was playing mature rugby, not giving away penalties, using their forwards. And then they lost it a little bit again, but at Ellis Park, they played very well against the Dragons, a bit loose as well. And then, like you said, against Perpignan, it was purely defense, get a turnover, get that penalty, and use Perpignan's poor discipline against them. And then Jaden Hendrickse just slotted everything that came his way. He's almost looking like he's much bigger. I don't know if anyone's noticed. He's packed on a lot of muscle this year, and he's been playing 12 a few games now outside of Nohamba. So I wonder if that's something that they're thinking about doing. About Nohamba will be on 19, and then he will be a 10-12 playing for us, because in this modern game, it seems like if you're a backline player and you want to be a Springbok, you need to be able to play more than one position. You can't be a guy who's a specialist unless you are literally the best in the world in that position, like Lucanio or Damien de Allende. So maybe that's kind of what these guys are looking at. The future of rugby is you've got to be more than one position in the back line. And I expect Nohamba to be back at 10 this weekend. I expect the Lions center B team to Perpignan. I expect the big boys to be back, and I think the Falcons are in for a bit of a tough game this weekend.
Just don't let the ball.
Let's hope for a Lions victory there. We spoke earlier, just touched on somebody who's been playing since the beginning of the Second World War. Cal, I'm going to throw it to you. The name is Ruaan Pienaar. In your opinion, age just a number in this sense. What is the secret that you would say to his ability to keep it so cool, calm, and collective, and so composed, and then just walk away with the man of the match performance at what is his naughty 40? You know, just give us your thoughts there.
Well, I mean, thinking about it, like I can't remember that many instances where he's been like badly injured. I think he's had a decent run of his career with injuries, but also he's played for some like class teams. Like he played for the Sharks when we were good. He played for Ulster for a while. He's played for some really good teams, and now he's kind of, I suppose, the the experienced leader of this new Cheetahs side. And, you know, they haven't had much game time recently. So that's allowed him to, I suppose, go through the very latter part of his career with limited injuries as well. And yeah, no, he's you know, he still kicks really well. I'd almost want him back to play 10 for us just because it might be something new. And it's good to see. I mean, in general, we are seeing rugby players' careers getting longer despite more prolific injuries. I mean, we were thinking a couple of years ago, Radiki Samo's 38 and he's playing for the Wallabies. I mean, that was really old back then.
Yeah.
It's kind of
more
reachable now.
Yeah.
You got Brock
Sport
Harris.
science. It's moved on. Sport science is not standing still. So
yeah, and I mean, you got Brock Harris with like what 1 million caps in like senior career. Sure. Like, it's insane. He's been playing rugby almost as long as since I started prep school. That's fucking worrying.
I got you, man. Then Riaan, sorry, just coming to the Champions Cup. Obviously, the question that I want to ask, we see a team like the Stormers going to Leicester. Going down to Leicester, of course, Handré Pollard, the Springbok winner in that Leicester side, shining through there. But if you take a team like the Bulls, just for example, and the Stormers, slightly different in the way that the Stormers now prioritizing, it would seem, by the way they chose their side, the URC. Why is it that the team like the Bulls are able to then keep it universal and sort of put their feelers in both tournaments? The Stormers then perhaps not really looking too much into the Champions Cup. What are your thoughts?
Well, I heard Dobbo speak and he said it was purely travel time. He couldn't send his full strength side up to Leicester because he said there's only a 6-day turnaround. So they would have only started training again tomorrow if they had to travel back from Leicester. So he says it was purely if they had been playing Saturday, he would have sent a full strength time. But because they're playing Saturday, there was a day less. It's a day longer travel, and he couldn't do it. So he says if they were to make it so that teams, he would even like to say, go up there for 2 games in a row, Champions Cup games, so they can stay there and play and then come back. But that was purely the reason why they sent that young side there. He said was purely because they don't have enough time to get back from that side of the world and then train enough for La Rochelle. I mean, the champions, the 2-time champions. You can't go with one session before facing those guys. So definitely that was the reason. I think they do really want to take this championship seriously, but it was purely because of time. They couldn't have their first team going there. And they did well. I mean, they were leading Leicester.
And to be fair, I think that, yes, they lost that game, but they've come out of it with actually a really good discovery in that fly half.
Yeah.
Like, he's decent.
Yeah. And the 8, the 8 that was playing instead of Ruudz, he scored on Visa, he made him look silly. So I think they came out of that with a few good, with a few good new guys to look forward to. So that was his reasoning, was purely it's a 6-day turnaround. We can't send guys there and come back.
I hear you, brother. Then, Carl, just from your side, we obviously saw the Bulls beating Saracens at home. The Bulls pretty much flying high, flying the flag for South African teams. With the acquisitions under Jake White, what are your thoughts? Also, keep in mind the caveat being the talk of Wales actually looking to pinch one of the Bulls players in Cameron Hanekom. Do you see him as a future Bok, or do you think there's any leverage for that to actually happen?
It depends where. I think that will come a lot to where he feels most comfortable. If he really has kind of a bit of patriotism towards South Africa, I reckon he'll stay because he is very good, and he's almost forcing other players in other clubs to change position. And like move to flank because he's really good. I think he's going to have he won't have a straight run in. He's got a lot of competition. I think the Stormers 8 are really good. I think Tinnerson is really good. From what I saw, he got on in the second half against Leicester, but the week before he was really good. But I mean, in terms of the way the Bulls are going, they're doing really well in all competitions. But I have a feeling that they're not going to win any of them because they're trying to prioritize everything instead of being realistic in what they can manage in order to win something. And I think, yeah, it was Jake White who said, we want to go out and win everything, and he's doing well. I just don't know. I don't know what the longevity of that is.
Fair comment there. Riaan, then just coming to the Stormers, you mentioned, obviously, you had some positive reinforcement or feedback regarding the Stormers. They're hosting La Rochelle this weekend. In a nutshell, what do they need to do to beat the reigning Investec Champions Cup winners?
Pray, hope the stadium is full, and then get ready to tackle some big forwards. Scrumming, that's going to be the thing I'm looking forward to the most, because it's that new pitch that they've put down in Cape Town, which was a big issue for them last year. Kitsoff is gone and doing not very well at Ulster, so that's another big one. And then I don't know who La Rochelle will be sending, if they're sending a big boy team. Having lost to Leinster last week, I think that's kind of changed their plans.
At home, eh?
Yeah, if you lose at home, that puts a big problem, a big spanner in the works. So we might be seeing the big boys of La Rochelle coming down south, just especially in the forward pack, to try and bully the Stormers, which is something that Munster managed to do last year. But that was on the old pitch. This is now the new pitch. From the sevens, it looked like it was doing pretty well. There wasn't guys slipping and falling over all the time. So if the weather's good, if the crowd is good, which is, I think it will be, because they'll be seeing Dylan Lates and Raymond Rule and those guys again as well. I think we're in for a cracker. And I think if the Stormers scrum holds up and if their line-out works well, they should be able to take this one. But this is La Rochelle. They are incredibly good and incredibly powerful in the forwards.
Absolutely. Cal, then to you, I'm turning my attention to you. You weren't so hopeful of the Bulls, saying they're not going to win anything this year. They're traveling to Lyon. Obviously, it's an away game. We know the South African teams sometimes blow hot and cold. In your opinion, considering Lyon just almost pulled off an away victory at Bristol last weekend, what do you think the Bulls need to do, considering that they are actually flying business class? Will that have any bearing in terms of travel fatigue?
I mean, the way they're doing in the URC, you'd think that they'd be okay. I mean, they are kind of used to traveling. I think the Bulls will win. They're playing really well. And speaking, talking about this La Rochelle and Stormers game, looking at La Rochelle's next few matches, I think we'll see a hybrid team from La Rochelle this weekend against the Stormers, because then they've got home against Leicester, and then away against Sale. But they're both in the UK, so they won't have to travel that much between the two. So I think they'll prioritize those two, considering the Stormers haven't won a game yet. But I think the Bulls will beat Lyon, but it won't be easy.
I got you. And then I'm going to throw the final question to you guys. This is international news, obviously. Riaan, you can answer first, and then Cal, give your opinion. Eddie Jones reappointed as head coach of Japan. My question is, do you think Eddie Jones has done anything to hurt his credibility, considering how he threw himself in the mix in terms of royalty for Rugby Australia and their subsequent failure at the Rugby World Cup?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's what everyone says. This guy's credibility is gone. He lies, and he didn't do what he said he was going to do. And the Aussies did really bad, and then he left. I mean, obviously that doesn't look good. It looks terrible. So I think it's hurt him. But the Japan gig would be a little bit out of the spotlight unless they get called into the Rugby Championship or something like that, which there's a chance of that happening.
That'd be great.
Yeah, but I think he'll be under the radar at Japan now, which is what he needs. I always thought he needs to just stop coaching for a bit. The man's been in the spotlight too long. He's been in the newspapers. Everywhere he goes, the rugby is second, and it's Eddie Jones's press conferences first. So just get him out of the spotlight, let him get back to the grind, and just get back to coaching. I think it's gone a bit too far, this whole thing. And I'd be happy to have him out of the news for once. Just no more Eddie headlines would be very nice.
I've got to admit, I'm sick of his face.
Yeah. And I'm sick of guys like Woodward and all those guys just selling newspapers, writing about him, just clickbait articles and getting people riled up and all that. Just get something new to write about. I'm sick of Eddie Jones now.
Carl, your thoughts?
I mean, let's be honest. A shock to no one, probably not. I don't know. I don't know where I really lean on his kind of whole thing with Australia, because I know they weren't willing to do what he was asking them, and the problem is, like, with his track record with coaches, with assistant coaches, especially during his time with England, where he basically treated them like a machine gun. I'm not surprised. And then, that's all spun up the idea that maybe Jake White will be the next Australian coach. And again, why not? Like,
he would take it.
Go. The sad thing is, like, it's very funny to laugh at Australia, and they're a crap side. They shouldn't be, and the world rugby is better off when they're not. So it's only a good thing for them to get better. It'll make Super Rugby entertaining again, and that will make New Zealand a bigger threat. And like, I want to see a good Australia, because then, beating them has some credibility in it as well.
I want them to soften up the All Blacks before they play us for once. I don't want the All Blacks to come play us after 2 80-point games.
Yeah, I mean, the weird thing is, like, everyone's saying, "Oh, Eddie Jones was lying about his." In a way, he didn't really lie. He just didn't tell the truth. Like, it was a a lie through lack of providing information. He was like, "Oh, we heard you've been talking to Japan. No, I'm committed to Australia." I was like, "Okay, but you didn't say you weren't talking to Japan." And
he wasn't honest, I would say. He just
it was a white lie, lack of information. Yeah. But yeah, for God's sake, you're right. I just don't want to hear about him anymore. I'd rather hear about anything else, to be honest, except just it's a weird one. But I am excited for international rugby, in the sense this Six Nations is going to be really interesting. There are a lot of players that really have been around for a while that won't be playing, that have taken themselves out of contention, and I hope to see changes in all of it, even if it's it's not decisive in terms of who wins it. I just want to see, like, a kind of changing of the guard type thing, and then these just new exciting players coming through.
Gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you this evening. We definitely hope to see all the fans, of course, live on Forever Sports, Forever Rugby, for all the games this coming weekend. It's only going to be that one of the South African teams will have to lose, based on the fact that the Cheetahs and the Sharks are playing. But we look forward to South African teams really putting their muscle down and getting the victories behind the belt. Until next time, folks, it's been a real pleasure. Safe travel in the holidays. Look after yourselves, look after your family, and have a blessed, blessed, blessed festive season. From us here at Forever Rugby, at Forever Sports. Until then, bye for now.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Oh.
You're getting bogged way too started way too quickly.